In today's education session, we are going to be talking about self-employment, more than just owning a business. As you are aware, the college has updated our self-employment document, and this presentation is meant to provide you with an orientation to what's new in that document. The college frequently reviews and revises our documents to ensure that they are up to date with the most current evidence-informed best practices. So what is the college's role in self-employment? Well, firstly, our regulatory mandate is for public protection. As self-employed registered nurses and nurse practitioners who are business owners or contract workers, they do not have the benefit of legal resources within the larger healthcare authorities. In these larger authorities, insurances and policies and procedures and legislative requirements are vetted through business and legal counsel regularly. And self-employed registered nurses and nurse practitioners do not have that benefit. Therefore, they may be a bigger risk to the public, and they may need to be provided with resources to help support their self-employed practice to meet the regulatory expectations. There are practice consultants available to provide direction to self-employed registered nurses and nurse practitioners on any practice-related questions or concerns. The college, however, does not approve business endeavors, such as, is this a good nursing business to start, or provide any business advice. It is the responsibility of the individual self-employed registered nurse or nurse practitioner to seek out that business information. So as a nursing consultant for policy and practice, we receive a large number of calls from registered nurses and nurse practitioners looking for direction with respect to what they need to consider before embarking on self-employment. First, we must have a clear understanding of what it means to be self-employed and what really is the definition of self-employment. So, of course, if you are holding yourself out as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner to provide nursing services, you must hold a current practicing license with the college. Self-employment is also known as private practice or independent practice. And there are a couple of distinctions here. So you could be the sole practitioner, meaning that you own a business that provides nursing services, such as you own a foot care business and you provide foot care services in that business. Or you're in a business relationship. So you can either be performing in that business relationship, you're performing nursing services for a third party or another party. So you can be employed as a registered nurse in a spa to provide foot care services. However, are you employed as a contract in a contractual relationship? Are you employed as an employee? And if you're employed as an employee, what does your job description state? So there's a couple important things to consider here. If you're holding yourself out as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner and providing services, you are accountable for all aspects of your individual nursing practice. And then on the other hand, if you do not hold a license, but then say that you're providing nursing services, then you are now practicing without a license. So it is really important to know the type of business relationship that you are in. And you need to ask that question of your employer because it gets very important, and I will discuss that a little later on. The Canadian Nurses Protective Society describes two ways to work, and one of those ways is as an employee, and then the other way is as self-employed individual, but they use the legal term of an independent contractor. Further, CNPS lists a number of factors that indicate self-employment, and this is just a couple of the indicators on their list. There are many common misconceptions about self-employment. So a lot of things that we hear is that you're just doing this on the side, but you only have one client, or you're only doing this once or twice a month. So these are misconceptions because if you are holding yourself out as a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner, and the public or the people that you are providing the nursing services to expect you to be providing nursing services because you are a registered nurse or nurse practitioner, then you are embarking on self-employment. And then you are accountable for everything that your nursing, that your individual nursing practice is responsible and accountable for. Another question that we get a lot is what I am doing practice as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner? So to be registered with the college, you must have completed an approved education program specific to registered nurses, and you must have passed the registered nurse licensure exams. That's why licensed practical nurses, for example, cannot claim registered nursing hours for doing similar work. You must be registered and hold a current license with the college, and you must use the protected titles registered nurse or nurse practitioner, as they are reserved for license holders. We created an appendix with a number of reflection questions that's new to the self-employment document that we would ask you should you called us inquiring about practice hours. And these reflection questions help you with the question of what portion of your self-employment can you use towards your nursing practice hours for licensure renewal. Going through that document and thinking about your individual practice, we would ask you, do you introduce yourself as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner? Do you sign your documentation as a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner? And does your business cards have your designation? Would you direct your clients or public to the college's website to validate your license to practice? And are you practicing under your nursing registration, even if you hold a license from another discipline? So you might be a registered acupuncturist as well, but you're practicing under your nurse's license, and that your acupuncture is just one of the modalities you use in your nursing services. Does your practice setting have liability protection for nursing practice? Do you have the CMPS liability protection? Do you use philosophical and theoretical perspectives to guide your practice from nursing? Because the recipients of your nursing services expect that you apply nursing knowledge and skills and competencies in your role. Do you regularly apply your nursing knowledge, competencies, and judgment in the provision of your services? So you could be an RN in a non-traditional role, such as providing complementary and alternative therapies. However, you're still using the entire nursing process, where you have your assessment and your interventions and your evaluation, and you make that plan of care. So you may use many different modalities and not just one. And the professional development opportunities that you attend would specifically add to your nursing knowledge to maintain your continuing competency in your nursing practice. So again, if you were providing cosmetic procedures and all you did was attend continuing competency education on Botox or just your cosmetic services, then you would have to think about the type of professional development opportunities that you should be attending that would add to your nursing specific knowledge. And when you're thinking about your individual practice, you have to think about the policies and procedures that are available to you to guide or accomplish your role as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner. And that includes your evidence-based guidelines or best practices and collaborative teams. Again, you really need to use the full nursing process as the focus of your employment or practice setting. You use the nursing knowledge, competencies, and judgment, even if you're using interventions from another discipline, but they're based on your nursing assessment as part of your treatment plan. So you could be practicing as an RN using acupuncture as an intervention or modality, but not only doing acupuncture. You are aware of any interventions exclusively within the domain of another profession or a restricted activity. So you can't practice within the legal domain of medicine. So you wouldn't be able to do surgery as a part of self-employed practice. Do the healthcare services you provide require critical thinking, problem solving, professional judgment, and an accurate interpretation of information from a variety of sources? And you should be able to answer yes. So what does that mean? What does it mean to practice as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner? When you are holding yourself out as a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner, you are accountable and responsible for adhering to relevant federal and provincial legislation and regulation and any other of those requirements. It could be best practices, specialty standards, a Canada Revenue Agency, and the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. And of course, once you're registered with the college and using the protected title of registered nurse or nurse practitioner, you are responsible and accountable to the standards of practice, the code of ethics, the scope of practice, where you're educated, authorized, and competent, the self-employment documentation, advertising nursing services, the nature of the therapeutic nurse-client relationship, and maintaining your continuing competency. So thinking about scope of practice and competence. Self-employed registered nurses and nurse practitioners are responsible for the services they deliver and for the nature of the nurse-client relationship. They are directly accountable to the client, to whom or on behalf of whom the nursing services are being provided, and any third party with whom the RN or nurse practitioners may have been contracted for payment of the nursing services. As such, registered nurses and nurse practitioners are required to practice within their legislated scope of nursing practice and to practice only those competencies for which they have the appropriate education, authority, and competence. And information related to scope of practice is found in our regulatory document, Scope of Practice. And you can stay tuned for early or in June or in the middle of June. The Scope of Practice document has also been updated. So part of competence means you have the necessary knowledge, skills, judgment, and experience to be able to perform the nursing services that you're doing. And a big consideration is, can you manage the outcomes and all outcomes, expected and unexpected, in your practice setting? So I'll give you an example of a registered nurse who's providing cosmetic services. So when you are providing cosmetic services, you might be doing Botox injections and dermal fillers. So we would ask, do you have the necessary knowledge? Botox and cosmetic procedures are not covered in the ELCs, so you would have to have education to ensure that you know all about Botox and dermal fillers so that you could provide safe, competent, compassionate, and ethical nursing care. Do you have the skills to provide the services? So providing Botox is more than just the skill of a subcutaneous injection. You are still required to do your complete nursing assessment and use the nursing process. This is where you will use your critical knowledge and thinking and your judgment. Another important consideration is where you are providing these nursing services. So if you are providing the nursing services in your basement of your home, you must be able to manage expected and unexpected outcomes. So you still have to maintain sterile procedures. You are still required to maintain privacy and confidentiality. You have to be able to manage any unexpected outcomes. So if one of your clients has an arrhythmia because they have a reaction to Botox, do you have an AED? Can you manage those outcomes? If there is facial necrosis due to the dermal filler, would you have the antidote on hand? Would you know how to give it? So these are some considerations that you must think of when you're thinking about embarking on self-employment. And another one is, do you have the ability to link to the public health system if it's in respect to population health or reporting? How do you manage that? So within self-employment, there's a couple of things that you need to complete. So if you are a sole practitioner, then you need to develop policies and procedures for your specific area of practice. And this includes, how are you going to obtain informed consent? How are you going to maintain privacy and confidentiality? What methods are going to be followed for sterilization of equipment? How are you going to document? And so on and so forth. If you are employed by a private company, then you must advocate for policies and procedures to support your nursing practice or standards. So that's if you're in that contractual relationship in the spa. You still need to have something to follow. And examples are documentation and record management, your informed consent, cleaning of equipment, compliance with FIA, how you have collaborative services with other providers, payment for services, succession planning, and closing a practice. It is also very important for you as a self-employed registered nurse or nurse practitioner to identify your professional support systems. And there are many special interest groups, and I'll show you one at the end. And they can assist you in identifying, attaining, and maintaining competence and best practices. We also recommend that you contact CMPS and in addition, contact a lawyer or business consultant to discuss issues related to professional liability, general liability, and any other forms of insurance. So CMPS, the Canadian Nurses Protective Society, will provide liability protection or professional liability for the nursing services you provide. However, if you are providing nursing services out of your home, the basement of your home, and somebody slips and falls on your property, then CMPS will not cover that. That is not nursing services. That is your business insurance. Another thing is if you mischarged somebody and then there was an issue with payment or services or your taxes, then you would need a separate business insurance for those types of liabilities. The other thing that you need to do is go to mycrnl.ca and notify us of any change in your employer, and that's including the addition of self-employment within 30 days of that change or addition. And that's part of the nursing registered nurses regulations. NPs must also provide the CRNL with their business and telephone information. Another big consideration is who is the custodian of the client record? It could be you. So the Personal Health Information Act in Newfoundland and Labrador governs the collection, use, and disclosure of health information. And it is essential that self-employed RNs and NPs understand all obligations as a custodian of health information and other requirements under FIA. Self-employed registered nurses and nurse practitioners must refer or should refer to the Government Newfoundland and Labrador's website for information related to FIA and avail of the online learning modules. And that's the website there. So if you are self-employed, then according to FIA, you have to have a private and secure area. You have to have a computer that has two-factor authentication. You need to have your paper documentation double locked in a secure room. And all of these things you are accountable for as a self-employed registered nurse or nurse practitioner. In the health authority, if you're working as part of a health authority and not self-employed, then all of this is taken care of for you. But as a self-employed individual, then you need to consider these things above and beyond, and they might not be intuitive to consider. This is the same as if you're a contractual worker. So you need to have that conversation with the spa, if you are working with the spa, to say, listen, who's going to follow FIA? Is it going to be me or is it going to be you? And there needs to be something written down to say who is the custodian and how are they meeting the requirements of FIA. So your hours of practice as a registered nurse or nurse practitioner, that's for submission of hours. You can contact the college, that's a registration department. So your hours of practice as a self-employed person must be verified by an independent third party. That could be your tax specialist or your office manager. Self-reported hours are not accepted. And like I said, for further information, then you can contact the registration department. Other considerations are kind of related to advertising nursing services. So these are some things that are frequently mentioned. So when self-employed, RNs and NPs are also under the employment of a healthcare organization, so you have more than one job, then you must be cognizant of the ethical implications of engaging in both roles. You should inform your employer of your self-employed practice and know your employer's conflict of interest policies or procedures or positions. You should not refer clients from your employment-related contacts to your private practice. In addition, if you are involved in sales or product promotion, then you must ensure that your personal or your private interests do not interfere with the interests of the persons receiving care or with your own professional responsibilities. And that's part of your code of ethics. So you can't go into your employment setting and say, geez, your feet are really bad. You should come to me on the side. I have my own foot care business and I'll take care of you. And that's because it's not ethical. You're supposed to give your clients a range of choices so they can make an informed decision and not just only promote your own business. The other one there is no family doctor, no problem. We can provide the exact same services here. So advertising of nursing services by registered nurses and nurse practitioners must be conducted in a responsible and transparent manner. Any advertising undertaken must not be reasonably expected to mislead the public. And this statement misleads the public because family doctors and nurse practitioners do not provide the exact same services. So you must act in a manner that is consistent with the public image of nursing and within legal limits, within the CNA Code of Ethics, the College's Standards and Guidelines, and other relevant documents, such as the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. So this is just the special interest group that I was talking about. It's called the Canadian Association for Self-Employed RNs. They were published in Canadian Nurse because there are a lot of self-employed RNs and there's lots of activity. So this special interest group can provide you with a wide source of information and support. And that brings us to the end of our presentation.